The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Its faint vibration echoed through the quiet house, cutting through the dim evening air. Sarah glanced at the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. The message was brief, unsettling. "Call now," from her private doctor. Her fingers hovered over the phone, and a chill ran down her spine. Her instinct screamed at her to ignore it, to push it out of her mind, but she couldn't. Not with the urgency in his words. Her husband had passed 2 years ago, and since then the distance between her and her late husband's family had grown wider by the day. They had always held a certain air of superiority, something that always made Sarah feel like an outsider, even when she tried to fit in. But this was different. She could feel it deep in her bones. There was something they weren't telling her, something beneath the surface, and this text confirmed it. She wiped her hands on her jeans, a nervous habit she hadn't done in years, before quickly dialing the number. The line clicked, and his calm voice greeted her, but it was different. There was an edge to it. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Dr. Mitchell said. "I've been running some tests, and your blood work is alarming. You've been poisoned." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Poisoned? Her mind raced to all the times she'd cooked dinner for her family, preparing meals with love. The people she trusted had to be the ones responsible. "Who?" she managed to ask, her voice shaking. "Someone close to you," he replied. "Someone you've trusted for years. Your mother-in-law." The words hit her like a freight train. Her own mother-in-law, Vera, a woman she had always been cordial with, but never truly close to. Could she really be capable of such a thing? "Your system is deteriorating slowly. It's a slow-acting poison, Sarah. I need you to be careful. Look through your food, your utensils. I'm sending you a list of things to look for." She stood there, frozen, the phone pressed to her ear. Her mind was in a whirlwind, but one thought pierced through the fog. How could she? Her breath came in shallow gasps, and for the first time in years, she felt powerless. She knew her mother-in-law was controlling, manipulative even, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. Sarah hung up the phone, her hands trembling as she set it down on the counter. She turned toward the kitchen, staring at the familiar surroundings. The pots, the utensils, the spices. Could she really trust any of it? She reached for a bottle of pepper and then froze, her heart racing as she remembered a conversation she'd had with her husband before his death. Vera had always seemed a little too interested in the family's assets, too eager to control. A chill spread over her skin as she grabbed the pepper bottle, turning it over in her hands. This could be it, couldn't it? She unscrewed the cap, inhaling the sharp scent of the spice. It had always been one of her staples, but tonight it smelled different. She shook it out onto the counter, inspecting every grain like a detective searching for clues. There was nothing unusual about it. No signs of tampering, no odd chemical smell. But she knew deep down it wasn't the spice that was the problem. It was everything she had trusted for so long. Just as she began to process the shock, the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Sarah hesitated, then walked to the door, her steps slower than usual. When she opened it, her mother-in-law stood there, her eyes wide with a feigned concern. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, a manipulative smile curling at the corners of her lips. "Is everything all right, Sarah?" Vera asked, her voice a bit too sweet for comfort. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "I need to ask you something, Vera, and I need you to be honest with me." Vera's smile faltered for a moment, but then she regained her composure. "What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost." I know what you've done, Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with anger. I know about the poison. Vera's eyes widened, but only for a fraction of a second. Then the facade returned and she laughed lightly. Poison? My dear, you're overreacting. You've been under so much stress lately. I'm just trying to help. Sarah didn't believe her for a second. I'm not an idiot, Vera. I've seen the changes in my health, and I know who's behind it. She stepped closer, her gaze intense. What's your game, Vera? What are you trying to pull? Vera's smile faded, replaced by a coldness that chilled Sarah to the core. You think you can outsmart me? You're just as vulnerable as your husband was. You've always been weak, Sarah. You're no match for me. The words hit Sarah like a slap to the face, but she stood her ground. I trusted you, she said quietly, the pain of that realization settling deep in her chest. You were the only family I had left. Vera scoffed. Trust is a luxury for the naive. You've always been too trusting. Your weakness is your undoing. But as Sarah stood there, anger and disbelief swelling inside her, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. There, on the kitchen counter, lay a set of documents, barely concealed beneath a pile of mail. They were familiar. She'd seen these before. But now they meant something much more ominous. She reached for them without thinking, flipping them over to reveal the unmistakable signature of her late husband. As she read the papers, her hands grew cold. It was the will, the family's will, and the changes in it were undeniable. Vera had made sure her assets would go to her, not to Sarah, not to anyone else in the family. To Vera. You've been plotting this all along, haven't you? Sarah's voice cracked as she spoke, her tears threatening to fall. But she refused to cry. She refused to be weak. Why, Vera? She asked, her heart breaking. Why? Because I deserve it, Vera said, her voice ice cold. And now everything will be mine. The betrayal was too much. Sarah stood motionless for a moment, absorbing the crushing weight of it. But there was one more twist waiting for her. Jonathan knew, Vera added, a sly grin crossing her face. He's been working with me, all along. Jonathan, her son, the last person she ever thought would betray her. Her blood ran cold as she processed the final truth. Her family, her own flesh and blood, had turned against her. Before she could react, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from the doctor. It was a call from her lawyer. She picked it up immediately, her pulse quickening. Sarah, the lawyer said, his voice urgent. There's more. Your mother-in-law. She's sold her home. The one asset you had left. Sarah's mind raced. She felt as if the floor had been pulled from beneath her. Everything she had worked for, everything she had trusted, was slipping through her fingers. This is only the beginning, she whispered to herself, a deep resolve forming within her. I won't let them destroy me, but I'll make sure they regret ever trying. And with that, the final thread snapped, sending her down a path where there was no turning back. The morning after the confrontation with Vera, Sarah sat at her desk, her fingers numb as they hovered over the stack of legal documents in front of her. The quiet hum of her computer seemed distant, as though the walls of her home were closing in on her. The weight of the previous day's discovery pressed on her chest like a vice. Her world had shifted in the span of a single phone call. The realization that her family was behind her poisoning, the slow, deliberate erosion of her life, felt like a punch to the gut. As she shuffled through the papers, she caught sight of a document that made her breath catch. It was a piece of paper that hadn't registered on her radar before. Her eyes narrowed, Her fingers traced the signature line. A forged signature. Not hers. Not her husband's. Vera. A wave of nausea swept over her. The walls of her home, once a safe haven, now felt like a battlefield. She read the document over and over, as if expecting it to change. The forged signature confirmed that the property, the house that had always been hers, was now officially in Vera's name. The shock sent a tremor through her body. How far had they gone? She hadn't expected her mother-in-law to be this deep in the conspiracy, but the forged signature was a clear sign that Vera was more than just a manipulative force. She had been systematically dismantling everything Sarah held dear. But this was a step too far. Sarah's hand gripped the paper tightly, her knuckles turning white. The phone sat quietly on her desk, but she didn't have to wait long before it buzzed. The name that flashed on the screen was her lawyer's, David. She didn't hesitate to answer. "David," she said, her voice steely, "tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." David's voice was calm but laced with concern. "Sarah, I've been reviewing the documents and you're right. This is bad. I've confirmed that the signature on the deed is forged. Your mother-in-law's lawyer is behind it. I'll need you to come in as soon as possible so we can file this with the court." Her head spun, but she gritted her teeth. This was the moment where everything changed. "I'm not going to sit back and let them take everything. You'll have my signature on whatever you need." She hung up the phone, her mind racing. It wasn't just her home. It was her life, her legacy all being stolen. Her family, her son, had been in on it too. Jonathan's betrayal weighed heavily on her heart. She had always believed in him, but now, she wasn't sure who he was anymore. As the hours dragged on, Sarah made her way to the law office. The walk from her car to the building felt like she was moving through quicksand. Every step was weighted with the knowledge that her life had been stolen from her without her even realizing it. The air inside the office was cool, sterile, and smelled faintly of coffee and paper. The walls were lined with books and legal documents. Everything that once represented justice now felt like a cruel reminder of the power that was being wielded against her. David stood up when she entered, and his somber expression only confirmed her worst fears. He handed her a stack of papers, and Sarah's stomach dropped as she scanned them. "Vera's lawyer has been working behind your back for months," David said. "These are the papers they've filed with the court. It's a full legal assault, and you're going to have to fight back." "Why would they do this?" Sarah's voice shook, but she refused to let her tears show. She would not cry in front of him. Not now. David looked at her with pity. "Because they want control, Sarah. They've been after the inheritance for years, and now they think they've won." Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process what he was saying. Her life, the life she had built, was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it, or so it seemed. "What do we do now?" she asked, trying to focus. "How do we stop this?" David paused, then handed her another set of documents. "I found something. You're not going down without a fight. This is a secret transfer of a key asset, a piece of land buried in their paperwork. It was never in the original will, and they didn't want you to know about it." Sarah stared at the land's title, her heart pounding. She'd been so focused on the house, she hadn't seen this coming. The land was worth more than she could imagine. It was the key to her mother-in-law's plan. A cut to the email David had forwarded to her confirmed everything. There it was in black and white. Jonathan and Vera working together to secure their future at her expense. "They've been planning this for years," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. This is about more than just the house. This is about power. David didn't respond, but his silence was enough. They both knew what had to be done. As she left the office, her mind buzzed with the decisions she had to make. But then, just as she stepped outside, a message came through her phone, an anonymous tip that made her freeze in place. They're selling off the land to avoid taxes. It's all part of the scheme. Her blood ran cold. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The plan was already in motion. The choice was now hers. Expose her family's betrayal and risk losing everything, or keep quiet and let them destroy her. Every action, every decision would change her future, and she knew it was time to make her move. She stared down at the screen, her mind made up. The choice is mine, she muttered, but every move I make changes everything. The camera slowly pulled back as Sarah stood still, the weight of the decision hanging over her. Behind her, the shadows lengthened, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The silence of the living room felt like a heavy weight pressing down on Sarah. The faint tick of the wall clock echoed in the stillness, a constant reminder that time was slipping away. Hours before the final court hearing, she sat in the dimly lit room, the weight of the impending decision closing in. Her hands were trembling, not just from fear, but from the realization that her life was about to change forever. The betrayal from Jonathan, the manipulation by Vera, everything had come crashing down around her. She had always prided herself on her independence, her strength, but now, as she stared at the papers on her coffee table, her heart felt like it was breaking. Her eyes fixed on the will, the piece of paper that would decide her fate. She had fought so hard to get here, but the road ahead was now uncertain. I've given them every chance to do the right thing, she whispered to herself. But now I have to do what's right for me. The camera lingered on her face as she took a deep breath, the camera pulling back slowly to show her alone, facing the storm that was about to hit. Her future, her freedom, all hung on the choices she made in the next few hours. A notification buzzed on her phone, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was from David, her lawyer. Sarah, we found something. Call me. Her heart skipped a beat. She had known this was coming. The final twist. David sat across from her, his face grim. The papers on the table between them were more than just legal documents. They were her lifeline. Sarah could feel the cold air in the room, the tension thickening with every second that passed. Look at this, David said, sliding a paper across the table. His eyes were wide, a mix of shock and relief. Sarah picked it up. Her breath caught as she read the lines. A hidden clause in her husband's will, one she hadn't known about until now. A clause that ensured she could never lose her assets to manipulation, no matter what Vera or Jonathan had planned. Her husband had protected her even in death. She wasn't the one who needed to fight for her rights. He had already done it for her. David looked at her, his voice quiet. Jonathan and Vera never saw this coming. Your husband's will was written with foresight. This clause, it's going to change everything. The realization settled in her chest, a weight lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this fight. She had been fighting for her dignity, but now she had the upper hand. He protected me, she murmured, her voice breaking slightly. Even in death, he made sure I wouldn't lose. The camera cut to a close-up of the will, her finger tracing the clause. Sarah's face softened, but the steely resolve in her eyes remained. Now, it's my turn to protect what's ours. But just as she thought things might be falling into place, a new, more sinister challenge presented itself. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jonathan. The voicemail was brief, but laced with venom. "I know what you're planning," he said, his voice smooth, calculated. "If you don't give up the fight, I'll make sure a certain family secret comes to light. It could ruin you, Mom. Think carefully." Sarah's blood ran cold. He was desperate now, desperate to hold on to what he thought he could control. Her finger hovered over the phone, her thumb ready to delete the message. She listened again to his threats, but this time, instead of fear, she felt a surge of defiance. "You think you can intimidate me with threats," she muttered under her breath, "but I've been through worse, and I've survived." She pressed delete. The power was back in her hands, and she wasn't about to let him tear her apart with his empty threats. As if on cue, her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Jonathan, but someone she least expected, a former family friend. "I have something for you," the voice on the other end said. "It's time you knew the full truth." Minutes later, Sarah sat with her lawyer, watching as the screen of her laptop displayed email after email. Bank records, financial statements, and incriminating messages between Jonathan and Vera. Her heart sank as the evidence unfolded. The financial manipulation, the calculated moves to steal her inheritance, all laid bare before her eyes. "I've been alone in this fight," she thought, "but now I have a chance. I won't let them take everything." David leaned in, reading over her shoulder. "This is huge. We have everything we need now. The case is in your favor." With the final hearing looming, Sarah stood in front of her mirror. The reflection staring back at her wasn't the woman who had been betrayed. No, she had grown into something else, something stronger. As she looked at herself, she knew that this wasn't just about taking back her home. It was about her peace, her dignity. She wasn't going to destroy Jonathan or Vera, but she wasn't going to let them ruin her either. "This ends today," she said, her voice steady. "Not with a war, but with truth." The camera followed her as she walked out of the room, her stride purposeful and calm. The courthouse loomed in front of her, its doors now a symbol of everything she had fought for. She wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. She was fighting for her future. The shot lingered on her face as she approached the courthouse, her eyes filled with determination. The camera pulled back slowly, revealing the ominous silhouette of the courthouse as the doors closed behind her. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Sarah knew she had the power to win.